On the hallowed ground of Arlington, I walked my 21 steps, a silent sentinel sculpted from granite. But one act of desecration shattered my resolve, unleashing the buried warrior beneath the uniform. The polished marble plaza gleamed under the afternoon sun, a stark white against the manicured green of the Arlington grounds. 21 steps. That was my world. A precise, measured universe of 21 steps south, a 21-second pause, a turn, another 21-second pause, and 21 steps north. Rain or shine, heat wave or blizzard, this was my post. This was my penance, my peace. The weight of the M14 rifle was a familiar comfort on my shoulder, its bayonet a silver tooth against the sky. The crisp ceremonial uniform was a second skin, a suit of armor not against bullets, but against the ghosts of my past. Most people who come here are respectful. They stand in silence, their faces a mixture of awe, grief, and gratitude. They understand what this ground means. They feel the weight of the sacrifice sleeping beneath the stone. But today was different. I felt them before I saw them, a ripple of discord in the quiet reverence of the crowd. A loud laugh, sharp and ugly, that cut through the hushed air. I didn't break my cadence. My eyes remained fixed on a point on the horizon, my expression a mask of granite indifference. That's the job. You are a symbol. You are not a man. But the man was still in there. The man who had seen things that would make the devil himself flinch. They were a group of 5, maybe early 20s, dressed in a uniform of their own, sagging jeans, oversized hoodies, and the kind of arrogant swagger that screams insecurity. They swaggered to the front of the crowd, pushing aside an elderly veteran in a wheelchair to get a better view. A low murmur of disapproval went through the onlookers, but no one said a word. They were intimidated. I, however, was not. I continued my patrol. 21 steps. Click-clack went my steel-tapped heels on the marble, a sound of unwavering discipline. Their leader, a wiry kid with a mess of tattoos crawling up his neck, smirked at me. "Check out this dude," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Playing soldier." His friend snickered. I paused. 21 seconds. My gaze didn't waver. Inside, the old instincts began to stir. I catalogued them in a fraction of a second. Leader in the center, cocky, likely overcompensating. 2 flanking him, bigger but followers, their eyes darting nervously. 2 more hanging back, the lookouts. Standard 5-man pack structure. Predator analysis was a reflex I could never unlearn. I turned with military precision, the rifle shifting flawlessly in my gloved hands, and began my 21 steps back. The discipline was a dam holding back a flood. "Hey," the leader shouted, "I'm talking to you, tin soldier." I ignored him. My duty was to the tomb, not to him. This was sacred ground. His disrespect was a sacrilege. But as I reached the end of my patrol and turned to face the tomb again, I saw it. The leader had unhooked the velvet rope and stepped onto the plaza. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. This was a line that was never crossed. My training dictated the response. I brought my rifle to port arms, the movement sharp and loud in the sudden silence. My voice, unused for hours, came out like a crack of thunder, deep and devoid of any emotion. "It is requested that all visitors remain behind the chains." The leader just laughed, a high grating sound. He took another step, his dirty sneakers scuffing the pristine marble. "Or what? You gonna march at me?" He turned to his friends, playing to his audience. "Look at him. He's just a decoration." He was 10 feet away now. My entire being screamed at me, every fiber of muscle honed in the deserts of Afghanistan, and the jungles of God knows where, was coiled tight. I could close that distance in less than a second. I knew 17 ways to disable him before he could even blink. But I was a tomb guard. My hands were bound by ceremony and honor. He saw my stillness not as control, but as fear. He took another swaggering step forward, pulling a crumpled cigarette from his pocket and sticking it between his lips. He lit it, took a long drag, and then, with a final, contemptuous sneer, he flicked the still-burning cigarette onto the black mat directly in front of the tomb. The dam broke, not with a roar, but with a silent terrifying crack. The world seemed to slow down. The horrified gasps of the crowd faded into a dull hum. The sun glinting off the marble seemed to sharpen, to harden. He took his final, fatal step, closing the distance between us until he was right in my face, smoke from his nostrils washing over me. "What you gonna do about it?" he whispered, his breath foul. He shoved my shoulder, a disrespectful, dismissive push. "Nothing. You ain't nothing but a statue." My head didn't move. My body didn't yield an inch. But my eyes, which had been locked on the horizon, slowly, deliberately, dropped to meet his. He thought he was looking into the eyes of a ceremonial guard. He wasn't. He was looking into the eyes of a man who had commanded Delta Force operators on kill or capture missions. He was looking at the ghost he'd just woken up. A quiet, almost imperceptible sound broke the silence. The subtle snick of my right hand, shifting its grip on the rifle, my thumb finding the cold, familiar steel of the safety. For a fraction of a second, the punk's bravado flickered. He saw something in my eyes he didn't understand, something ancient and predatory that didn't belong in the clean, sanitized world of a tourist attraction. But it was too late. He had crossed a line etched in blood and honor, and the statue was about to move. My world exploded into motion, but it was a controlled internal explosion. To the onlookers, it must have been a blur. My left hand, a steel vise, shot out and clamped onto the front of his hoodie, right below his chin. Simultaneously, I pivoted on my left foot, using his forward momentum against him. The M14, all 9.2 pounds of American steel and wood, became a part of my body, a fulcrum of devastating force. I didn't swing it like a club. That would be crude. Instead, I let it flow with my pivot, the heavy butt of the rifle arcing in a short, brutal path that ended squarely in his solar plexus. The sound was a sickening whoomp, like a sledgehammer hitting a side of beef. All the air left his body in a choked, silent scream. His eyes went wide with shock and agony, the cigarette dropping from his lips. He was weightless for a moment, his feet leaving the ground as I used his own body to break his balance. I didn't throw him. I placed him. With the same precision I used to march my post, I guided his fall, spinning him around and slamming him face down onto the cold marble, his head landing inches from the cigarette he'd so disrespectfully discarded. My knee drove hard into the small of his back, pinning him. The entire sequence took maybe 1.5 seconds. Silence. A profound, ringing silence fell over the plaza, broken only by the punk's desperate, wheezing gasps for air. The crowd was frozen, a gallery of stunned faces. My M14 was now held in a perfect vertical guard position, its bayonet pointed at the sky, my knee a merciless anchor on the punk's spine. I leaned down, my mouth close to his ear, my voice no longer the ceremonial bark of a god, but a low, chilling whisper that had made hardened terrorists soil themselves in black sites halfway around the world. "You will pick up your filth," I hissed, the words precise and sharp. "You will get off this hallowed ground, and you will never, ever return. Do you understand me?" He couldn't speak. He could only manage a series of pathetic, jerky nods. His friends had been paralyzed by the sudden violence, their jaws hanging open. Now the shock was wearing off, replaced by a mixture of fear and fury. "Hey, get off him," one of the bigger ones shouted, finally finding his voice. He took a step forward. I didn't even look at him. My eyes were scanning the other three, my mind a cold, clear stream of tactical calculation. The two on the flanks were starting to spread out, trying to encircle me. A classic pincer movement. Amateur, but dangerous in its numbers. They weren't just thugs. They were a pack, and I had just taken down their alpha. "Stay back," I commanded, my voice now carrying the weight of authority I hadn't used in years. It was the voice of a commander on a battlefield. "This does not concern you." "Like hell it doesn't," yelled the one on my left. He was reaching into his baggy jeans. "You're gonna pay for that, you freak." I eased the pressure on the leader's back just enough for him to move. "Pick it up," I ordered again, my voice dropping to absolute zero. Sobbing, he fumbled for the cigarette butt, his fingers shaking. The moment his hand closed around it, I was off him, stepping back into a centered stance, the rifle held ready. The leader scrambled away on his hands and knees like a beaten dog, gasping for breath. But his pack wasn't backing down. They saw my single step back not as a tactical repositioning, but as a retreat. Their courage surged. The two flankers and the big one in the middle started advancing on me, their hands balled into fists. They were closing the distance, shrinking my world from 21 steps to a claustrophobic circle of hate. I could feel the eyes of the crowd on my back. I could hear a woman starting to cry. My duty was to guard the tomb, not to engage any brawl. But they weren't giving me a choice. And then I saw it. The one on the left. The one who'd been reaching into his pants. His hand was out now. It wasn't a gun. It was a knife. A cheap switchblade, but the 6-inch blade gleamed with deadly intent in the afternoon sun. He flicked it open with a sinister click that echoed across the plaza. "Now what, soldier boy?" he snarled, a sick grin spreading across his face. They formed a semicircle in front of me, the one with the knife at the center. I was on an island of polished marble, the tomb at my back, a wall of aggression in front of me. I was a United States Army soldier, a sentinel at the tomb of the unknown. My rifle was loaded with a full magazine, a round in the chamber. But these weren't enemy combatants on a foreign field. They were American citizens, scum though they may be, on American soil. My rules of engagement were impossibly, terrifyingly narrow, and they were about to be broken. The click of the switchblade was a punctuation mark, ending the chapter of ceremony and starting a new one written in the language I knew best. My mind didn't panic. It became a crystal-clear tactical map. 3 hostiles, one armed with an edged weapon, closing in a pincer formation. Distance to each, approximately 8 feet. My weapon, an M14 with a fixed bayonet. Obstacles, a terrified civilian crowd behind them. Objective, neutralize the threat to myself and the sanctity of this tomb without discharging my firearm. "Drop the knife," I said. My voice was flat, an emotionless statement of fact. It wasn't a request. It was a final warning before the inevitable. The knife wielder laughed. "You're surrounded, old man. You drop your toy." He gestured with the blade. "Now!" He lunged. It was a clumsy, telegraphed move, all aggression and no technique. He aimed for my gut. It was the last mistake he'd ever make on this hallowed ground. I didn't step back. I moved forward. In the same motion, my rifle spun in a dizzying vertical arc. The bayonet wasn't the target. The solid wood stock of the M14 was. It met his knife hand with the force of a battering ram. There was a sickening crunch of bone. The knife clattered to the marble, and he howled, clutching a hand that was now a broken mess of fingers. He was no longer a threat. I pivoted, my focus shifting instantly to the big one on my right who was swinging a wild haymaker. I let the punch sail past my head, stepping inside his guard. My left hand shot up, palm heel striking him under the chin. His head snapped back, his eyes rolled up, and he collapsed like a sack of wet cement, out cold before he hit the ground. 2 down, less than 2 seconds. The third one, the last flanker, froze. His face, which had been a mask of rage, was now a canvas of pure terror. He saw his 2 friends neutralized with terrifying efficiency. He saw the cold, detached focus in my eyes. He saw a man who wasn't just a guard, but something far, far more dangerous. He took a hesitant step back, then another, before turning and scrambling away, tripping over his own feet in his haste to escape. The pack was broken. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. The crowd, which had been holding its collective breath, finally erupted. Some were cheering, others were still too shocked to move. I stood over the unconscious form and the whimpering man with the shattered hand, my rifle held at port arms once more. My breathing was even. My heart rate was steady. The storm had passed as quickly as it had arrived. The Tomb Guard commander, a stern captain named Evans, arrived with the first wave of military police. He surveyed the scene. 2 punks down, 1 fled, the leader still cowering near the ropes. He looked at me, his eyes taking in my perfect, unwavering posture. There was no question in his eyes, only a deep, unspoken understanding. He'd read my file. He knew exactly who Sergeant Major Marcus Thorne was before he became a Sentinel. "Report, Sentinel," he said, his voice clipped and professional, for the benefit of the gathering MPs. "Sir," I began, my voice reverting to the formal cadence of the Guard. "A group of individuals created a disturbance and desecrated the plaza. One individual crossed the protective barrier. When challenged, he assaulted a sentinel. His accomplices then produced a weapon and initiated a coordinated attack." I paused. "I defended myself. And this post, sir." Captain Evans nodded slowly, his gaze drifting to the unconscious thug on the ground. He then looked at the crowd of witnesses, their phones all out, undoubtedly recording. He knew this would be a media storm, but he also knew the truth. "Secure the prisoners," he ordered the MPs, before turning his full attention back to me. He walked over, his footsteps echoing in the now clearing plaza. He stopped just in front of me. He didn't say anything for a long moment. He just looked at me, and for the first time I saw something other than a commanding officer. I saw a flicker of profound respect. "Your relief is on its way, Sergeant Major," he said, his voice low and for my ears only. He used my old rank, the one I had carried through 16 years of hell and back with Delta. "You're being placed on administrative leave, pending a full review." I simply nodded. "Understood, sir." He put a hand on my shoulder, a gesture that was completely against protocol, but one I deeply appreciated. "Marcus," he said, the formality gone, "you did what you had to do. You upheld the honor of this place. That's all that matters." As my relief arrived, a young, stoic soldier whose face was a mirror of my own an hour earlier, I performed the changing of the guard. The ceremony was perfect, precise, every movement imbued with a gravity that felt heavier than ever before. As I marched off the plaza, away from the tomb, the crowd parted for me. And then, something incredible happened. An elderly man, the veteran in the wheelchair who they had pushed aside earlier, struggled to his feet, assisted by his son. He placed a trembling hand over his heart and rendered a salute. Then another person saluted, and another. Soon, dozens of people in the crowd, veterans, civilians, men, women, and children, were standing in silent, respectful salute. They weren't saluting a tomb guard. They weren't saluting a brawler who had taken down a group of thugs. They were saluting the quiet, unwavering strength that the tomb represents. For the first time in a long time, the ghosts of my past felt a little further away. I had come to this sacred place seeking peace from my war. And in the end, by bringing the war to its pristine steps, I had finally found a measure of it. My 21 steps were done, for now, but my duty had been honored.